My cat Freddie loves to be brushed and cuddled. But stirring up his cat allergens meant sneezing and itchy eyes. Then I found Purina One Live Clear. It's cat food that reduced the major allergen and my suffering in as little as 21 days. Now, we feel closer than ever. If you have issues with cat allergens, you really need to try Purina One Live Clear.
Try new Purina One Live Clear today. Purina One, a difference from day one.
One of these hosts, I think, would be smart to give it a try.
And then you start a chocolate line, and then you really make the big bucks.
Calling Mr. Beast, yeah.
And then you get an Amazon show, and it's all full circle.
Welcome to the Ankler Podcast. I'm Elaine Lowe, staff writer at The Ankler and author of the series Business Newsletter. This week, we're going to talk about pretty much the only thing anyone in the industry is talking about right now, the abrupt and curious cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, what it says about the business and the political climate we live in, put into context with some fresh reporting from our own Leslie Goldberg on what went down behind the scenes as Colbert learned his show was getting canceled. Leslie's going to join us a little later, but first, some good old-fashioned generational angst. How a generation raised on TV is now feeling rattled and disheartened by the industry that makes it. Naturally, the Wake Up Sean McNulty is here on behalf of his fellow Gen Xers, and is probably going to tell like and subscribes Natalie Jarvie and I and all of our fellow millennials to get off his lawn. Right?
I take requests as someone. I just turned 50 this week, so I feel like I'm in prime area to comment on this. So I had the T-shirt, I had the stamp.
You were
here,
so quiet about it, and you were just in LA, unbeknownst to many.
Oh, that was last week. It was this week. So we get a cake. Oh, come on, it's all right. Yeah, okay.
I make a mean cake, Sean.
She does.
Did not know that.
And a great sourdough.
And I'm sure Richard would have enjoyed all of it. So yes, exactly right. The Ankler hang. But yes, I feel I need to chime in on this one, Elaine. The
you're
millennial
the perfect person
telling me about my generation in Hollywood. But yes.
I'm sure people love that.
Yeah, exactly. Nothing more than Gen X loves is being told how their life's going by millennials. So yeah, exactly right. That's the lesson number one about us Gen Xers. So
one of my favorite things to do is to stare into the abyss about every 6 months and contemplate my own professional mortality.
Oh my!
So I brought about a dozen late 40 and 50 somethings along for the ride for this week's series Business Newsletter to talk about their professional mortality.
Nice.
Because I was curious about what particular pains Gen X feels at this juncture of their career.
Elaine wants to know what's ahead for her. That's exactly, yeah.
And also, please paint my future for me. But boy, Gen X is going through some stuff.
Yeah,
Sean.
that happens. So we're talking roughly anybody in the late 40s to about 60.
45 to 60. Anyone born 1965 to 1980.
Roughly,
But it's been a rough terrain. Natalie, you and I have covered the combination of like corporate consolidation, the impacts of the streaming era, the economic climate, plenty over the years.
Mm-hmm.
It's really made a lot of Gen Xers' ambitions go a little sideways.
Yeah, I mean, what was so interesting to me was, you and I have both reported a lot over the years about the way in which, younger generations feel like their careers have stalled because boomers in particular aren't retiring and aren't handing off these jobs to the next generation. I had never stopped to consider like the unique ways in which that affected Gen X. And, because I'm a millennial, so I think
Gen X would say that tracks because we always feel forgotten.
Exactly.
I will second that for Elaine. Yes, exactly.
Yes. I admit I'm a self-centered millennial. So that was just really interesting to me to read about, those particular challenges. I'd love to know if there's any that, stood out to you in your reporting. But as I read your piece, in particular, the, challenges that women faced kind of in their early careers to, wear the high heels and look a certain way and act a certain way. I think we're pretty lucky, Elaine, that some of those expectations didn't fall on us as millennials in quite the same way that it did on Gen X.
We're definitely lucky, I say, as I wear sweatpants and record this from the comfort of my home.
Not worrying. Was it the pointed shoes? What was the?
Oh my gosh! First of all, I love hearing these tales from like the late 90s and early aughts. Very like Devil Wears Prada type stuff. Mm-hmm. Full empathy, of course, for what that must have been like at the time. But heard some interesting anecdotes of like we were told like don't wear open-toed shoes if it's in the late fall.
Well, go to the diet. What was it the pill to go get your shot for weight loss or whatever? That was another one, right?
Somebody who
that
came
one's
up.
coming back around.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately.
Now it's just Ozempic. But yeah, you used to have a weight loss guy, or
Yeah, women who came up under, there was a studio chief who one person told me was, quote, the epitome of a skinny blonde lady. Her and her whole staff wound up being like, where can we find these weight loss solutions? And we're directed to a diet pill clinic in Santa Monica.
Yeah, so different times a little bit. I
mean,
to a degree.
But unfortunately, some of those pressures remain, right?
Sure.
And so, now, like you said, the thing is Ozempic, and a lot of people in the executive suite are apparently still on it too. When I talk to some of these Gen Xers who say, yeah, those pressures still very much so exist. Like for all the talk of aging gracefully and body positivity, like our society remains primitive in that way and has ridiculous expectations on women.
Yeah. But in terms of the job stuff too, though, it's like I had this conversation with the old friend of mine from HBO, and we're the same age, about in that kind of 50, and it's like, all right, do I change a job and maybe in 2 years that job could be gone? Job security in this day and age is out the window. Do I ride this out for a while, just the current job, and maybe it goes away in 6 years, but then I get them pretty close to retirement. I've had a good career. You wrote about what it takes to retire, how much money you need in your 401k. You're getting closer to that at Gen X now than you were further away from it before, where it's like you're looking
Everybody's
more toward...
looking at the last 10 years of their career and being like, do I hang on?
It's more toward the end line, not the where am I at line. It's the where do I need to end up line, and then I go and I'm on my way. I don't need to worry about all the stuff you just mentioned anymore. I can kind of check out of this and maybe leave LA where it is more expensive. You mentioned, what was it, $2.8 million? What was the number you had, Elaine?
According to Go Banking Rates, their estimation for retiring, quote unquote, rich retirement, which means like if you're accustomed to a certain way of life. What's that White Lotus quote with the Parker Posey character is like, I don't think at this age I meant to live an uncomfortable life. Like the much memed quote, right? Like, so apparently the amount that you need to retire in LA comfortably is $2.8 million, which I don't know. That seems very comfortable.
You guys pretty close to that? Okay.
Yeah,
exactly.
for over a 20-year span. But then again,
for 20-year
LA does have a very high cost of living.
Yeah.
But it's like, how many people are at that point?
Yeah, I know. But I did say I will, as the Gen Xer here, I'm like, it's a little more challenging for millennials and Gen Zs in a sense, in that at least, in terms of because there's a lot of talk from your conversations, Elaine, about how do you get ahead in the business and how do you reach a certain state.
A lot of the Gen Xers I talked to acknowledged that they were fortunate enough to have had that ladder at that time.
That's exactly what came to mind.
In the early aughts, to be able to get to an executive vice president title by the time you're in your mid-30s.
or 40 years old. Exactly.
And one of them was telling me, like, a lot of the 30-somethings I look at now, like, they're still at an assistant's desk. So it's tough out there. But thank you for the sympathy, Sean.
Well, yeah, maybe more in that millennial, maybe that you mentioned like the 40-year-old crisis, Elaine, for some people was coming up.
I was talking to one rep who reps below the line, like, DPs and line producers and stuff. And they were telling me that, some DPs, they hit 40 and they, quote, freak the fuck out because they're like, oh, am I cool enough to work with a hip young director?
Yeah.
Is a hip young director going to want to work with me?
Yeah.
So, Elaine, as elder millennials, we're going to be there before we care to admit. Is there any advice that you got for Gen Xers that we can start thinking about and applying to our own careers?
Well, aside from the advice when I asked, would you advise a young person now whether they should join the entertainment industry? God, the number of no's I got was really something. So that's a message to the Gen Zs out there, to the millennials. Honestly, I think a lot of them are more looking at the millennials that may wind up leapfrogging them in the process right now, who are in really good spots. The people who are like 30 to 40 years old right now are kind of in that sweet spot where you've got a lot of experience and you've got some momentum, and maybe you can actually climb your way up to the top if there is a way to climb anymore.
Yeah.
But I don't know, Natalie, like, what do you think when you look at your own professional mortality? Gaze into the abyss.
Join Elaine in the abyss.
I guess I got to come for the wake up here. I don't know. I got to leapfrog Sean. No. I mean, I feel fortunate to have a job and a paycheck right now. Media, we don't even need to get into
I was going to say,
print media
it's a
landscape.
it's a sister situation here when we look at Hollywood and you look at journalism.
But you do mention that mindset, Elaine, about, again, that 30, we're doing pretty well. I'm going to go ahead. And then you get to that when you got to put you 50 years old, whatever, and you either got there or you didn't. And then that's
or you're
where
stalling out.
That's where exactly right. So put that mindset 10 years later, and some people, it doesn't apply to everybody, did get to a certain point, and some people don't. This is the way it works in Hollywood, or any industry for that matter. It's not endemic to Hollywood. But now just to add that kind of uncertainty to it. And if you lost your job in 2023, they mentioned a lot of people, have like a lot of friends out of work who are in this demo. And it's like, who's hiring the 52-year-old executive who's going to be, paying X, Y, and with the paycheck to go with it? It's a little more, Natalie, again, maybe we get a little more entrepreneurial, finding new things. Are the areas, right? I mean,
the people who are hiring the 50-something executive in some cases are YouTube creators.
Right.
I do think that there's opportunity to position that experience and that know-how for someone who wants to build the media startup of the future, and who's looking for someone with that expertise. In many cases, they need someone with your experience.
The adult in the
these
room.
22-year-old creators need a grown-up to walk them through the business and how to connect with a lot of these traditional studios.
Right. And the money and the advertisers and the relationships you have. You can't really replace relationships. I think that's a key part of it as well.
And Natalie, the road for a lot of these creators is back to legacy TV. Not for all of them, but for some of them, right?
Yeah, sure. Yes. I think many of them see that as a benchmark of success and kind of, a trophy to be won in a way. But that's not where the longevity of their careers is ultimately going to be. And I think they know that. I think they see, kind of traditional TV opportunities as that thing that's the stamp of success, the thing that, legitimizes what they're doing.
Yeah. But as we get into mentioned we're going to get into late night TV, it's like, all right, you produced for Colbert. It's like a late night shifting to the Theo Vons and, armchair experts. Like your skills still transfer. It's just not going to be working, on a 200-person staff on CBS, but it's not like, you don't know how to produce a good interview with someone. It's like that's a skill that transfers over, but it's just a different, and now it's just a mindset shift perhaps.
Yeah. I mean, I will say for all of the existential doom and gloom that comes up in these conversations and for the very, very real economic challenges and industry challenges, that there is a real glimmer of hope there. And, I think a lot of people have gone the very entrepreneurial route. And you're seeing this interesting shift from major media institutions, these major studios and networks, to people opening up their own production companies, doing more consulting work, working with influencers to build out their studios. There are a lot of exciting opportunities out there. And, we've got a whole rundown of them on theankler.com. So for more on how Gen X is navigating this new reality, ways to cope, way to pivot your careers, definitely check out this week's Series Business newsletter and Natalie's like and subscribe for more at theankler.com. All right, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, we're going to get into the still developing story about the cancellation of Stephen Colbert's late night show and what that signals for the future of late night TV and the business as a whole. We'll be right back.
Gatorade is the #1 proven electrolyte blend designed to hydrate better than water. So you can lose more sweat and raise your game. Gatorade, is it in you?
Hi, I'm Ashley Collins, and I write the Dealmakers newsletter for The Ankler. Dealmakers guides readers through the intricate workings of lawyers, agents, and bankers, with insights exclusive to The Ankler covering the fast-changing state of deals, film finance, M&A, and the new frontier of AI law. I also interview some of the biggest names behind the industry's headlines, the people moving the entertainment industry forward, one DocuSign at a time. Dealmakers comes out every other Tuesday as part of a paid subscription to The Ankler. So please join me by subscribing today at theankler.com.
Welcome back to the Ankler Podcast. I'm Elaine Lowe. We're discussing the surprising cancellation of The Late Show with Stephen Colbert and what it means for the late night TV landscape. So here with me are Sean McNulty, Natalie Jarvie, and joining us for this segment, Leslie Goldberg of Series Business. Welcome, Leslie.
Thanks for having me, Elaine.
Leslie, I know you did a lot of reporting on this week. Help me fill in some gaps in the timeline. So what we knew before this week is that on July 17th, CBS announced that The Late Show with Stephen Colbert would end after the upcoming season, come to a close in May 2026, not just with Colbert as host, but the entire show, an iconic talk show franchise that started with David Letterman in 1993. And CBS said that, quote, "This is purely a financial decision against a challenging backdrop in late night. It is not related in any way to the show's performance, content, or other matters happening at Paramount." Those quote unquote other matters, likely referring to CBS parent company Paramount settling a lawsuit with President Trump for $16 million over a 60 Minutes interview with Kamala Harris just 2 weeks before. What did you learn that we didn't know before? Tell us a little bit about the behind the scenes.
Well, according to sources, James Dixon, who is the manager and agent for Stephen Colbert, among other people in the late night space, was called by CBS on June 27th. That was well before the 60 Minutes settlement payment, at least the news of the 60 Minutes settlement payment. And Dixon waited to tell Colbert because he allegedly wanted to tell him face to face. And Colbert was on vacation ahead of the July 4th holiday when the show was dark. And the soonest that Dixon could get to his client to tell him in person post-vacation was Wednesday, July 16th. And that's, of course, 2 days after Colbert returned from vacation and 2 days after he completely torched CBS and Paramount for the settlement with Trump. So that's, to me, was the biggest new piece of information that I uncovered in my reporting. So it seems to be, like, at least from what I'm being told, and I trust my sources completely, that this wouldn't have mattered. Like, everyone at the time knew that the optics were going to be terrible no matter when this news went out, that everyone would connect this to Trump. But it seems like this was a decision that was months in the works, that executives internally had been considering this for a long time.
So what you're saying then is the news actually came down in late June, before the Paramount settlement with President Trump, before Stephen Colbert called it a big fat bribe on his show, that those decisions were made beforehand. Because I know there's a huge question, right, around like the optics of this, of it comes days after Colbert called it a bribe and all of that other stuff. So this, to you, like, puts a pin in the conversation of, like, was this politically motivated?
For me, it does. And like you guys, I was completely and totally suspicious of this, but I've done enough reporting around this that I actually believe now that this was a financial move. We know that the show costs $100 million annually to produce and was losing this past year between $40 and $50 million. That's a huge loss. I believe that this was financially driven because when you look at the timeline, June 27th, CBS executives informed Dixon that The Late Show is being canceled. July 14th, Colbert comes back from vacation, torches the network. July 16th, James Dixon tells Colbert after the taping ends. The next day, Colbert tells the world. And what I understand is that the timing of Colbert telling everyone is because he wanted to be completely transparent with his staff. And the secondary piece of it is he didn't want the news to leak, but more importantly, the timing of the announcement of CBS making the decision the end of June is because the 200 staffers, the estimated 200 staffers who work for Colbert on The Late Show, needed to have new deals completed. It's not just a renewal of a deal that's in currently in place, but Colbert's deals and everyone else with the show went through the end of next summer. And as we all know, late night shows and pretty much anything that airs on linear in the summer tends to have lower ratings because, look, it's beautiful outside. We were just talking about this. Everyone wants to go outside.
So that kind of goes to the question of the curious cancellation timing. I mean, like, Natalie, Sean, all three of us were at upfronts. Did the question ever occur to you guys of, like, why not just announce this at upfronts, right? And, like, then bring in some ad money for a very hyped up last season of the show?
WCU is closed. Fox is closed. What are they talking about? Sports. What's leading this stuff? It isn't late night TV that's driving the big deals of advertising here. So, yes, to your point, maybe you could have hyped it up a little more. Maybe they still can. I mean, this is a year away. We're not like this is happening. Oh, it's happening in 3 months. You missed the opportunity to upsell Colbert for a year. But I mean, Leslie, I kind of really fall with you in this camp, and your timing breakdown was great. And his contract's up in 2026. That means they would have to decide: are we going to renew this guy at about 15 to 20 million? Leslie, I think he was getting
15 million a year.
Yeah, so to host a show that averages 2.4 million, and it peaked in 2017, 2018 at about 3.1 million an episode. So you're going to make a bet for another, say, 4-year deal to 2030. And as you guys go to Colbert and say, hey, you're going to take a pay cut to $8 million? You might be like, no, thank you. Employing 200 people. If you look at NBCU, remember, and everyone forgets this part, but last year, 2024, they cut Seth's band and they cut Jimmy back to 4 days a week. They made cutbacks there. This is not happening in a vacuum that is being presented as like, oh my God, this came out of nowhere. So I'm Leslie, your reporting kind of solidified in my head. I mean, I get the optics of it. It is what it is, but it's hard for me to say like, oh yeah, this would have been a good idea to keep this going at this current incarnation for another 4 years. Is a little hard for me to swallow. But Natalie, am I missing? Is there a counterpoint here? What do you got?
No, I mean, yeah, clearly there's a real financial motivation here. We've been tracing for years now the declines of ratings in late night and the struggles. We've seen after Corden went off the air, CBS tried to reinvent the slot with After Midnight with Taylor Tomlinson. That only went, a season? And then she basically was like, I'd rather go do stand-up and other things.
She'd rather go elsewhere. She's like, I'm making more money elsewhere. Trevor Noah, the same kind of deal, right? At Daily Show is like, yeah, exactly right, Natalie.
So, we've lost that late night slot entirely. They didn't replace After Midnight after Taylor left. We've seen that too with NBC and the spot after Seth Meyers, which
right?
They tried to have a show hosted by Lily Singh. After that show was canceled, they didn't really replace it with anything. So, these shows are kind of slowly falling off of the schedule altogether.
Yeah, and they're not replacing Colbert. Remember, this isn't like, oh, we're going to have a new host come in. It's like The Late Show is over. So again, there's this other caveat of like, oh, if you're conspiracy theorying in this, it's like, it's not like they fired him and are keeping this. It's like, we're exiting late night. I mean, I'm very curious to see, Leslie, did you get any, I'm probably not at this point, but any intel of like what they might do here? I mean, it's a year off, obviously, but like, all right, 11:30, go back to the affiliates. What do we do with that? Still prime time slot, right?
It is 10 months. You still have 10 more months of Colbert, but it is too soon for anyone to know what's going to replace it. But one thing that they have to do is have a show that actually makes money in that slot.
Right.
And when you look at what replaced After Midnight, it's a Byron Allen show that is basically a time buy. Byron Allen pays Paramount to air Comics Unleashed in that slot. And as a result of that, Byron Allen gets a part of the ad sales. Paramount gets a part of the ad sales.
Split,
and it costs them nothing to air that show.
Right.
And when you look at it, that's exactly in line with what CBS has done in other day parts. We all remember The Talk, the daytime show that aired at 11 a.m. on CBS. And that was canceled last year after 14 seasons. And they replaced it with the NAACP produced soap opera called Beyond the Gates. And that comes with a built-in ad sponsor in Procter & Gamble, meaning you're not completely reliant on linear advertising. It costs a lot less to make than The Talk did, and you've got a built-in sponsor. So that show is already in a better position than The Talk, and that ran for 14 seasons. So you can see where the economics are. And the other point that I wanted to make, too, is that this decision was made by CBS and not by anyone at Skydance, which is the part that I found extremely interesting because...
Right. Did David Ellison know? Did he have any part in this decision?
So David Ellison had no part in this decision. He was informed the morning of Thursday, July 17th, which is the day that Colbert told everyone at the top of his show. Skydance executives were informed by Paramount that this was going to be announced then. But Ellison and no one at Skydance, including Cindy Holland, was consulted on this decision. As sources say that CBS execs feared that if they looked under the hood and said, oh, well, this show is losing $40 million a year, why are we keeping it going until next May? Let's cancel it now. And CBS execs wanted to make sure that Colbert had enough runway to kind of close it out on his terms and at least get some last revenue from the final 10 months of the show.
Well, I will say there is one among us at the Ankler who does have some skepticism toward this, and that would be Richard Rushfield himself, the Ankler himself, who doesn't even like late night talk shows and is exceedingly skeptical of the idea that CBS canceled Colbert purely over the financials. Everybody, listeners, you should read his column, but one thing he says is, quote, Owning a studio means you should defend your company's ability to make entertainment as you see fit, so your employees have a modicum of assurance that they can go on about the jobs you hired them for, knowing that you, their employer, are not going to sacrifice them at the altar the first time some tin horn yahoo knocks on the door and says he wants one of your people dead. So Richard, in very demure, subtle, not at all dramatic fashion, has some thoughts on this. I'd be very curious, listeners, what you all think. So make sure you email us at podcast@theankler.com. But, going back into this discussion of late night, the question of how relevant is late night television anyway seems to sort of be a perennial one now. We know it's a waning art form. But, these are also shows that get a lot of traction the next day on social through clips. Someone made the point that this is kind of how we process the news, right? Through late night comedy. What alternative do we have if this doesn't exist anymore?
Yeah, I think an interesting point is, you get 10 million views on YouTube. It said just 2.4 million on linear on late night. All these people who are defending Colbert and stuff, how many of you are actually tuning in at 11:30 at night to still watch this show? Natalie, the money on YouTube is not linear money. YouTube is not paying you for this right to air your show. So the economics, are not as great as, even though getting 10 million views, Natalie, the money is hard to watch there, right?
The money on YouTube is not what it is on broadcast TV. However, I will say that I do think some of the onus is on these networks for not doing a better job of monetizing those digital views. Okay. My understanding from some conversations that I've had this week is that, often YouTube ad spots are kind of treated as an extension of an existing linear ad deal, or, that sometimes the hosts aren't all that interested in recording, bespoke ad integration for YouTube. The more time and thought that's put into how to actually make these YouTube channels successful, the more money they could be making there. I mean, look, Joe Budden just said that he makes $20 million on his whole podcast network. So there's money to be had if you think about it in, a slightly more, digital first, forward-looking way. These TV networks aren't necessarily set up to do that. They're not, quote, thinking like a creator, but maybe they should be. And maybe there would be a path to some financial success for these shows if they, got a little more creative.
Yeah. And that's part of the reason that led to the cancellation is because Colbert has the smallest footprint on YouTube when you compare him to Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel.
Number one in the ratings, but smallest footprint on YouTube, which is quite an inversion.
Right. Yeah. So that's a lot less revenue that you have coming in from digital, whereas your competitors have a little bit more going for them.
Yeah, you also look at Conan, who TBS ended that show too on linear. It's and he made an entire, he was already in podcasting, he made a podcast pivot, but that was where he went to. And I think, Natalie, he's doing pretty well in terms of his, Team Coco empire, right?
Yeah, I mean, he sold Team Coco to SiriusXM a couple of years ago for a reported $150 million. So that was a big business. I'll also point to Jon Stewart has been really smart about, kind of his, the digital extension of his universe. When he had his Apple TV Plus show, he had a companion podcast. And since he's returned to The Daily Show, he has continued that. So he does release these long form podcast interview episodes. Exactly. And listen, Kimmel and Seth Meyers, they all do this too. They all have digital first shows that, only exist on YouTube. Seth Meyers is called Corrections. They've all been nominated for Emmys, in fact, for short form Emmys. So,
nice.
They are trying things in this space, but it feels like the powers that be at these networks could probably do a little bit more to extract value, monetary value, out of some of these properties.
But there are a lot of creators that are very happy to take their spot when it comes to late night talk, right, Natalie? And I think the thing that's interesting too is when you look at the current talk show formats that exist in the creator space, like the Chicken Shop Dates, the Good Mythical Mornings, there's a real not time sensitive nature to the topics. It's you can just watch that anytime, which is the boon and the problem of late night TV in that it is so topical.
Yeah, I mean, there are shows that are, hugely popular on YouTube, on podcasting that look a lot like what late night talk could look like. I mean, Good Hang with Amy Poehler, which has been a huge success out of the gate.
I love that show.
It's so good. And it's a talk show, it's a podcast, but it's a talk show.
Visually very appealing too, right out the gate.
Absolutely. I do think, though, that these shows represent a bit of a path for what late night could be. And there's a few that we haven't talked about One that I've been really interested in lately is the Adam Friedland Show, which has a set that is inspired by the Dick Cavett Show.
Oh, yeah. I read about
And
this, yeah.
he's got a bit of a Jon Stewart-esque deadpan. And he had Anthony Weiner on the first episode of his show, second season of his show. So, he's getting newsmakers. He's in the conversation. He's one to watch. Also, the Washington Post TikTok guy, Dave Jorgensen, just announced that he's leaving the Washington Post and launching his own YouTube channel, which will be very kind of Colbert Report or Daily Show inspired.
I'll be very interested to see where that one goes. Somebody who comes from a news background, but has clearly done very well in the digital space. I mean, like for a while, like he was basically carrying their whole social media presence.
Yeah, absolutely. And, these are the people who a decade ago, 2 decades ago, would have wanted to become Daily Show correspondents, would have been looking to have that path and to eventually be the potential successors to a Colbert or to a Jon Stewart. Now they're just doing it themselves on YouTube.
Yeah. So what does Colbert do here? So let's put the money quarterback on this. So, all right, Colbert's done in 2026. Is there a digital future for Mr. Colbert? Does he go to Conan route?
Got a Substack coming? What's happening?
There you go. Exactly. Join the Substack revolution. Leslie, let's start with, what do you think? What do we got here? What's ahead here for putting the prognostication glasses on?
I don't think he's going to go after like Netflix money, because we know that these shows don't work. These topical shows do not work on streaming platforms like Netflix. I think it depends on how much they want to make waves. And in this landscape, it feels like no one wants to make waves. It feels like everyone wants these shows that are big and broad and can travel the world.
Right.
And that doesn't feel like a Colbert to me.
If somebody is going to take a big swing, wouldn't you think it would be Netflix?
They are the top dog. I don't know.
They're dabbling in live.
Live, yeah.
They've got the WWE.
And look, David Letterman's still over there, right?
Yeah, Letterman's doing his specials, this hour-long thing. So it's interesting. But is it better off to spend on Armchair Expert or something?
I mean, the bigger question is, does Netflix want to invest $100 million
well, how
in
much do you want to pay? Right, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, the shows aren't 200 people worth. I mean, the YouTube shows do not employ 200 people.
Yeah, and that's actually one thing that I asked about, too, is if in these conversations that CBS execs were having, did they consider asking Colbert for a pay cut? Did they consider trying to bring in a lower cost host? None of those things were discussed because the show underwent a round of budget cuts a year ago, and they still, they were hoping that the ad market would return, and it didn't. And they lost even more money this year.
Yeah.
I think the most surprising thing is that anybody thought the ad market would return.
Well,
it's fair.
Right. And much less, again,
Absolutely.
if you're going to renew this guy, again, to 2028, 2030, and Seth and Jimmy's contracts are up in 2028. Natalie, you said Kimmel's next year? Is that?
Kimmel is next year.
Right? Is that? Okay, yeah. So... we shall see. And he's famously kind of always said, Leslie, he's, I think he's one contractor where this is my last contract or that kind of talk too, right?
Yeah, he's been vocal about that last year of saying that he thinks this might be his last contract, but he, kind of felt the same way before that, his last 3-year deal. So we'll see what happens there.
No, he has his summers off, right? So he's found his way around that.
Yeah. And Disney is going to try to do everything to keep him. And then as for Jimmy Fallon and Seth Meyers, don't forget those shows are both produced by Lorne Michaels, who, really might be the most powerful guy in television.
Who will outlive us all, probably.
Who will outlive us, yes, exactly, Elaine. Right, correct.
Yeah. I would love to revisit this idea of what these hosts do next after late night, because there's not a lot of kind of traditional linear TV opportunities for these guys. They're very talented at what they do, but it's specific. And there's not, that many late night shows anymore, as we've discussed. So I do think that there is a path for someone to go digital. It's the creator path. It's a hard path, but you can do it. And one of these hosts, I think, would be smart to give it a try. And I think one of them, really could figure it out.
And then you start a chocolate line, and then you really make the big bucks.
Calling Mr. Beast, yeah.
And then you get an Amazon show, and it's all full circle.
Well, listeners, if you have any thoughts, tips, strong feelings about late night TV, make sure you email us at podcast@theankler.com. But to switch gears for a quick moment before we wrap, let's check in on the summer box office. Sean, how's Superman doing? What else are we expecting from this weekend?
If your Marvel friends are back, Lane, are you going to support them and hang out with them? We got Fantastic
Wait, what
Four.
Marvel movie is out? Oh,
come
right.
on. Oh, boy.
Pedro Pascal. Yes, I love Pedro.
All right.
I love Vanessa Kirby. I'm in. My kids actually want to see it for some reason. They have no other awareness of the Fantastic Four, but somehow it's
they got
permeated.
to them. All right, good for them.
Yeah,
good.
so it's got to my kids. That's how you get in.
Way to go, Disney. All right. Leslie, you're probably in on this, right? Fantastic Four. What do you got?
Yeah. I'm married to a superhero nerd. We're going to see it Sunday. Yeah.
No excitement
You
at
have
all
to
for
see
this.
it.
I don't know. I'm not a Marvel person. I'm like, but I'm like, this looks like the early reviews have been dropping
Oh, are
past
you
couple
interested?
days.
You're not even a Marvel person.
I know. I'm like,
Sean.
all right, but the reviews are,
Wait,
this
what is it about this one that's intriguing
because
to you?
they just drop into the movie and there's not like 30 minutes of like, here's how they became the Fantastic Four. Like, they just kind of like tell a story.
Wait,
and I'm like,
there's no origin story?
that's what I'm told. There's no, I've not seen
everybody loves the origin
it.
story.
No, but come on. It's like,
I'm out.
hey,
I'm out again.
They've done it. They did it in 2 other movies already. We're good on that. If you want to go watch
Those movies are not part of canon, though, I thought, is the whole deal with
now
this
you're
new
becoming
one,
a big nerd.
right?
You didn't know this was in theaters until about 90 seconds ago. So that's, and now you're getting hold
Well,
on to the
that's
canon.
what I have you here for,
Yeah,
Mr. Movie Phone.
that's it, Mr.
Tell
Movie
me when
Phone.
things drop.
Go see it Friday. But the creative Max Shackman, who did WandaVision, is directing it. So
Yeah,
like
that part I'm excited
so
about.
Good creative. That's what I mean. It just has some of that good juju going forward or whatever. So I think that's a positive sign. The tracking's definitely over 100 million. So we'll see if this can be the movie that maybe gives us a little push into August. So that's the big one. Superman's still going, and the Smurfs and I Know What You Did Last Summer didn't quite deliver last weekend. So
Well, they can't all be bangers.
they can't
but it
all be
looks like
bangers
we've got
all
a
the time. Yeah,
decently healthy summer at the box office.
exactly.
Then. All right, well, that's a wrap on this week's Ankler podcast. Visit theankler.com to subscribe to our full suite of newsletters and podcasts for the latest industry insights, including Series Business, Like and Subscribe, and The Wake Up. If you enjoy the show, please leave us a rating and review wherever you get your pods. You can also follow us at The Ankler on all major social platforms. Thanks so much to Leslie Goldberg, Sean McNulty, and Natalie Jarvie for joining, and a special thanks to you all for listening. I'm Elaine Lowe. See you next week.